Hey guys, I'm back to make a quick little video. Well, maybe not all that quick, but just following up with this demonstration file that we were working with in the classroom today. And I also wanted to just go over some basics about Adobe InDesign because I think there are maybe two or three of you in class that just aren't that familiar with it. So I need to show you the basics about, how to place type and how to place images correctly and understand the concept of the object frame and then the content frame. So we're going to come back to this file here momentarily, but I'm just going to create a brand new file, a new document, and it'll just be a one-page document. We don't really need more than that. So I'll turn off facing pages, and this is going to be an 8.5 by 11. Right now it's set to picas, but I'm going to set it to inches so you can see just a regular letterhead size document. And I'm going to give this 4 columns, and I'm going to have a gutter width of, well, this has 1 point. Let's just leave it at that for now. Set my columns back to 4. And I would like margins, so I'll spin that open. And I think this is the equivalent of a 1/2 inch. So we want a 1/2 inch margin all the way around the edges of this document. So this is going to be a 4-column document with gutter spaces between the columns, and then it will have a 1/2 inch margin around the edges. So I'll hit create, and there we are. And so when you're thinking about alignment, you're thinking about a grid framework that all of the visual elements are aligned to. And so I've set up this 4-column grid that we can practice this, these principles with. Let's go ahead and just create some placeholder type really quick. And so one thing, if you're, that this might be new to you in InDesign, the type tool is a little different than working in Microsoft Word or even Illustrator or Photoshop for that matter. When I click with the type tool on my page, I don't get a blinking cursor. And if I start to type, you can see my cursor changes to all these different tool options. And so what's happening is I need an object to place that type into, because InDesign sees all of the visual elements as objects, and every object has a frame. So type is considered an object and it lives in a frame. If I place a photograph in this file, it too will have a frame. And there are 2 different ways that you can, select those objects. And I'll get to that here in a little bit. But so back to the type tool and the concept of the type frame. We need to create a type frame in order to be able to actually create type in that window or on this page. So let me set my view back to normal. And I'm going to get the type tool, and I'm really just going to draw a box with the type tool. I'm going to click and drag and create a box. And I'm just staying within the column. Here we go. And so I'll now switch to my selection tool, and now you can see this frame is selected, and I can continue to change the size of it. So I can pull it down and scale it to be a longer frame, or I can stretch it to have it jump across 2 columns, and they're pretty versatile in that way. I'm going to make mine just a 1-column frame. No, you know what? On second thought, I'm going to make it a 2-column frame. So there you go. And now I'm ready to add some type to this. So I'm going to just click inside this frame. And now you see that there's a blinking cursor. So I'm ready to create some type. And I can just start typing whatever I want, but I don't want to be here for days producing just, play type. So there's a great feature in InDesign that allows you to place some placeholder type. It's called lorem ipsum. And if I go to type and go down to fill with placeholder text, boom, I have filled that whole column with just some gibberish. But it gives us something to work with so that we can practice working with type in this document. All right, and so now I'm going to go back to the selection tool, and I just want to show you a couple of things about type frames. So I poured all of this lorem ipsum in this column, and I filled it completely. And and if I were to take this frame and scale it up, the type is not really disappearing. It is now what's called overset type, and you'll see a little red square whenever this happens. And so with what we're doing today with lorem ipsum, that really isn't a big deal. But I just want to point that out to you, that if you're ever working in a real world situation using InDesign for an actual job, and you are given some, a Word document that all of that content has to be poured into an InDesign document, do be mindful, because you're not going to sit there and read it all and make sure it's all correct. So do be mindful about these little red error indicators. That is really an important indicator to let you know that you have some type that's missing. It's overset because it goes beyond the type frame space. So I wanted to point that out. Now I want to show you how to place a picture. So I'm going to create what's called a frame, and I'm going to use this tool right here. It's called the Rectangle Frame tool. And I'm just going to create a frame that just exists within one column. Notice that I'm not overriding these gutter spaces. So this is all, kind of definitely a part of good alignment. When you're working with a document like this, like say in a magazine, you always want to have these spaces between bodies of type. Whether it's a 2-column or a 4-column, those columns need to be clearly visible through these gutters. So anyway, back to this frame. So I'm going to bring a photograph into this document, and so I'm going to go and find one. And so I've gone to my file directory, and here I am. I found this nice picture of a man holding some fall leaves, and so I'll select that. Just double click, and that should load it. Let's see, let me try this again. For some reason, it was not being responsive. So I'm going to click on my frame once again. I'll go to File and Place. Maybe I went to Open. I think that was my mistake. And let's see. There we go. And now it's been placed inside that window. Now we only see a small portion of it, and that's because the image is much larger than the frame that I've provided for it. So I could do two things. I can select or scale the image window, and whoa, when I do that, you can see that it's a really big picture. So I'm going to zoom way out and just try to get a hold of this thing. So the way I'm just going to continue to scale this window open, just to give you an idea of what this window does. So it's exposing more and more of the image. Now, I'm obviously not going to work with a picture this big, so I'm going to bring that window back in. And the window, as you can see, acts as kind of like a cropping device. And now I'm just going to select the image itself and scale it down into that window. And so I'm going to do it by placing my cursor inside the window, and you'll see this little dial show up, and that's called the content grabber. So if I select that, that allows me to interact with the content inside of this window. Now what I'm looking for are the edges of this document. And whoa, I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's huge. Here are the parameters of this object. It's way outside of the page range. It's ginormous. So I'm just going to scale this down and put it inside that frame. So now I need to zoom into the image. And then I'm just going to deselect it for a second and just kind of reassess where I'm at. So you want to think about object frames. Like I'm moving this picture around right now by its object frame, okay? And then I interact directly with the object inside the frame through the content grabber, and that allows me to then move this picture around inside of the frame, okay? The object frame also, like I said, it acts as a cropping mechanism. So if I just scale the frame into the picture, then I essentially crop in on a certain area of the picture. But you want to think of the object frame as like an envelope. And the object frame can be an envelope for photographs. It could be an envelope for graphic design elements. It could be an envelope for type, because it does the same thing with type. And it is the part of this two-part component that you select to pick it up and move it and scale it and things like that. Or rotate it. I think I said scale. And then again, you interact with the object inside the frame through the content grabber, and from there you can scale it. And you can even rotate it in there as well. So I hope that these two concepts make sense to you guys. Just practice with it. You might get a little frustrated at first because it's a little different than any other program that you've used. But if you just, get in there and just kind of play in the sandbox like I just did, I think it'll have a more meaningful connection with you, or you'll develop a more meaningful understanding of it. So now I'm going to hop over here to Flow. So this was the file we were working with in the classroom, and it's not bad, it's got a sense of flow like we talked about, and the fact that the color scheme, works well thematically and it's appropriate for the content. But it's kind of lackluster, very plain, and we need some other elements that really kind of jazz it up and kind of bring these elements together better, and also just create a sense of continuity that spreads from one page to another. And so we're going to do that by editing the object frames of the type, and we're going to create an image frame at the bottom of this 2-page spread, and we're going to place a panoramic landscape in there, and then we're going to edit that object frame so that our type will reconfigure to wrap around the tops of these tree lines. So we'll end up with something that looks more like this. I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about wrapping type around text as well. So before we get started, let's look at wraparound type just for a second. I'm going to get rid of this image and the frame, and I'm just going to make a new frame. And stick another image in there. So you can see this picture is pretty big, and I'm just going to scale it down to make it fit inside of the frame that I've created. Of course, I'll have to change the frame a little bit as well because the orientations are not the same. So there's my picture. And now I will adjust my frame. So I'll just pull the edges of it out. The one thing that I always find difficult about this program is how faint these lines are. They're really kind of hard to see. Alright, so I have my people in their frame, and I just want to show you how to wrap type around text. So right now when I place this image over the text, and let's fill this column over here too. In fact, I'll just copy this over. Okay, so let's say that we want to wrap this text in these two columns around this picture. Because right now the picture is just sitting over it. Well, you'll select the image, and there's a window for text wrap, but there's also some options up here for text wrap. So you could really do either or. And I'm going to select wrap around object shape. And so now I can see that the text is moving to make room for the type. So it's wrapping around. Oh, I have it by the image. Hang on. You need to move it by the object frame. So you can clearly see the type is scooting around. We need a little bit of breathing room around this image. So this is a problem you might run into. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a feature that allows you to create some padding around the image where the text runs up to the frame and not the content. Okay, so you have these, I forget what they're called, the offset buttons that you can adjust to create more space around your image. And that buffer will follow the image anywhere you move it. All right, so let's hop back over to our demonstration video. So in this example, sample video, we're going to make some changes to this headliner. And we're going to have it, have parts of it dip down into the type area. So we'd like for the type to wrap around the G, or at least appear to wrap around the G. And then we're also going to import an image that runs across the bottom of this document that helps to create some visual flow. And so in doing so, by using images that have thematic reference to the whole fall foliage guide idea. And we'll also make some changes to the cover page of this magazine as well. So we'll have the subheader, participate with the image below by having the G kind of dip down into there, and do something different with these line elements as well, and make, like I said, a little decorative element to go over the K. so that we have a little bit of visual bridging here to create some harmony as well. So let's just start with the cover page. So on this page, I'm going to just use the pen tool, and I'm going to get started making this little element that's going to go over the K. And the pen tool is pretty easy to use. You start by just clicking and dragging to create what's called a curved anchor point. And I'm just going to do this between two anchor points. So I'm going to move my pen just, to the upper right of the K and click and drag once again. And now you can see we have a line element that's been created. And the color from this line is actually from the color that's already set for the stroke color. And then I'm just going to come back to the original anchor point. And if you'll notice, there's a little circle next to my pen tool. That means that I'm getting ready to close this path. And there I go. Now I kind of twisted the path on itself a little bit, so I'll need to take these directional handles and untwist that leaf element. You'll also notice that when you grab these directional handles, the lines change their shape and position. And if you move these anchor points, if I can select this one, you can also elongate those line elements as well. I'm going to put this back in place, and I'd actually like a different color for this. I wanted to show you a couple more things about these directional handles. When I click on a directional handle, well, I'm having a tough time selecting this thing by just its path. Use my convert anchor point tool and just hopefully reset it. One more thing I want to show you is that when I move these directional handles, I get this kind of seesaw effect. And I want my leaf to have more of a tapered tips on either end. So I'll need to lock these directional handles on either side of the anchor point. And so I'm using a Mac computer, and so for me to be able to do that, I'm going to hold the Option key down and then drag a directional handle in one direction. And you can see that the directional handle on the other side stayed put. It didn't move at all. And I'm going to do the same thing with the directional handles down here. I'm just going to hold the Option key down again and reposition those directional handles. So I've created this very simple, stylized looking leaf, and I'd like to fill it with a color other than this red color. So I'm going to use a color from down here in the photograph, and I'll need to add that to my swatches library. So it's not in there right now. I'm going to add a new swatch just by clicking the new swatch button. And so now I have a new swatch color. I'm going to double click on that. And I think I might be able to sample color from here. I know there's a way. I just don't know how to quite do that from here. So I'm just going to mix these colors until I come up with a color in this window that looks like it aligns with what you see in the photo. So there's a nice golden color. I think I'll go with that. And so this will be the color that I will apply to that stroke. And I also want to fill it with that color. I'm going to pick up that leaf and just kind of cover that top part of that K a little bit better. And I think that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to move the type elements, the leaf element, and just nudge those down. I'll increase the size of Fall Foliage Guide. I'd like for the E and the F to align with the edges of this photograph. So we want to make, more meaningful alignments between the visual elements. So I'll start by just increasing the size of the type frame, just to make sure I have enough room to increase the size of the type. And then I'll switch to the type tool. That'll give me access to the control bar at the character level, and I'll just bump up the type. And by doing that, that also makes my G bigger, and that lets it kind of hang down into the picture even more. And then I'll select Arkansas and the leaf element. For some reason, I cannot select those at the same time. There we go. And I also want to make Arkansas bigger, so I'll select the type tool for that and bump up the point size. And I have a little bit of overset type now. But that's okay, I'll get it back. And I'm not really crazy about this box here, so I'm just going to delete that. And we have way too much space at the top, so I just went through all this trouble to move this type down. It really all needs to go up here. And that looks better. And looks like we could even make this picture a little bit bigger if we wanted to. So let's move it up. Perfect. Now it fits that whole frame, or at least it extends to the bottom margin, so that's good. And I think I'll just put one clean line as a decorative element. Beneath Fall Foliage Guide. So this has a little more cohesive feel to me. All right, so now let's move on to the 2-page spread. So again, I'm not crazy about this block, or this rectangle, so I'm just going to delete that. And I'm going to work on getting the type to wrap around, the paragraph type to wrap around the header. So we'll start this process by selecting the type frame path, and we'll select it by using this direct selection tool. So you can see this light blue line that shows up around the header. We're going to add some anchor points to this because we're going to get ready to change the geometry of this shape. So you'll add, an anchor point here, And here I'm adding just probably 3 or 4 anchor points. And then I want to make sure that I deselect all the path and then come back and reselect it. What that does is that clears out any multiple anchor points that might be selected at the same time. So I'm just going to come through one by one. And again, these are very tiny, very hard to see, but I'm going to use the direct selection tool to lift this path and this lower path to fit right beneath the letters. I'll move this path up a little bit closer to that G. I'll move this one up a little bit closer and maybe over just a little bit. And that'll give this one more room to come up. And then I'll bring this little anchor point up. And so now we have changed this object's frame. So when I move the text up here, you can see it's not wrapping around just yet. I'm going to select this object and choose Wrap Around Object Frame. And there we have this nice little integration of the G dipping down into the type content. Now I'll also need to bring these columns up. And in fact, I'm going to bring my column guides back up just for a moment. Trying to select this picture to move it. And I want my picture to fit between 2 columns, so that's really important. Notice it's kind of hanging over a little bit. The columns are there for a reason, and that's to help you keep good alignment of the visual elements. So I'm just going to fix that by kind of cropping it in with its own object frame. And looks like my type got scooted a little bit. All right, so we're good to go. Now it's time to add our panoramic view of our trees. So I'm going to move this picture up. And in fact, I'm going to put it right smack dab in the middle of this page. And again, I want this to match up to the column's edges. So even though this is a 2-column page, we still are using a 4-column guide. And so we don't just place these pictures willy-nilly. They need to follow a pretty strict structure, guide structure, grid framework, if you will. Give it a little bit of breathing room. And let's see. Okay, now we're ready for the trees. So we're going to create a frame for that, and we're just going to get the frame tool here at the very bottom, and I'm staying within the margins. Though it might be kind of cool if you didn't. I mean, I don't know, let's try it out. We can always make it smaller. I'll just have it go end to end. And now with that frame selected, it's very important that you have your target area selected when you go to place your file. Now we're all set. You go to File, Place, and I'll do, I think this one fits better. That one's a lot prettier, but I'll use this one. All right. So I need to scale it down, obviously. So we've got the content grabber, selecting the image. I've lost my frame. I can't see where it's at. I think I see it, maybe. Okay. All right, so we'll go with that. And I don't know if this path has already been cut down. Let's see. Nope. Okay, so you can see when I did wrap around text, it just wrapped around the box because this is all part of the image, so the object frame, so we will have to edit that. Let's just turn that off. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And it might be easier if we turn off the visibility of the type for right now. So I'm going to go to layers and look for the type elements. And there we go. I might leave one on just so we have one to kind of work with if we need it. Kind of move it out of the way for a minute. And now I'm going to select my path again. And I'm just going to start adding some anchor points. It's important that you get them on the path. So have it selected. When you see that little plus sign, that means you're in the right place to create an anchor point. It seems a little tedious, and it is, but just be patient. Okay, so I have anchor points all the way across my path, and now I'm going to use the direct selection tool to start to just change the geometry of this path, just in different places. You can also select rows of them if you want. That could really speed up the work process, the workflow. And it does not have to be perfect, as you can see. It is just a very rough outline of these treetops. Whew, we are almost there. All right, good enough. Good enough. All right, so I'm going to get my type back down here. Don't know what happened to my picture. I guess I turned it off. I think that's what it is. All right, so do I have my type in the column just right? Looks okay. All right. And now I'm going to select my tree line, make sure it's set to wrap, and set my text. There we go. I wasn't actually selecting it. I thought I was, but I wasn't. So I have select the image, and then, darn it, I keep scaling that down. Select the image, and then select text wrap. And if you don't like the outcome, if you want more letters to dip down, you can just come in and edit that path, and the type will continue to, if it can, it will continue to rewrap and reconfigure to fit. To fit the new text frame. It's hard for me to talk and do this at the same time. So those are some tips and tricks working in Adobe InDesign. I think I'll add another line element beneath fall foliage, and I actually will just borrow this line up here. I'll select it. Not the word. That's going to be hard to select. It might just be easier to draw another one. So I'll get my pen tool. Start at the margin edge. Actually, I'm just going to click and release. I don't need a curved anchor point. And then click again to create another straight line. I'll escape, hit the escape key to end that line, and then pick up on the other side. Deselect that line so it doesn't literally pick up on it. Or you could have it go behind the G too. That wouldn't be bad. And you could fancy up this headliner by offsetting some type behind it. So I'll select this. I'm just trying to create a sense of, sense of flow and harmony with color and having elements that carry over from one page to another. So I'd like to add a little bit more of that red color into here, and also the same red from this line beneath. I'm just going to duplicate this type layer. And this bottom layer now, which is selected, and I'll turn off the top one for a second. It did not actually copy the type. So let's do that again. I'll turn off the top one just for a second. It's bizarre. I don't quite understand that. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to copy and paste it the way I always have. I don't know why it won't let me do that. I wonder if it's because I adjusted the object frame. I don't know why that would make a difference, but I would say that that's probably the culprit. Very strange. It's the first time I've ever encountered not being able to copy and paste type. But anyway, life goes on. So in this assignment, you will design a 3-page magazine layout. So you will include the cover page and have it fit, thematically with the interior, and it should be for a vacation destination. It could be a place that is a place that really exists, or it could be a place that exists in your imagination. But what I'm looking for is for you to not only continue to demonstrate the things that we've already covered in this course, like, placement and division, grouping and harmony, and but also really demonstrate your understanding of concepts like emphasis and alignment and flow. And so you will demonstrate that by creating a 3-page magazine layout. And so I will be looking for, elements that create a sense of flow, meaning that things carry over from one page to the other. They don't literally have to overflow like you see here, but we need to see, possibly repetition in elements. Maybe you have design elements that are just strictly ornamental. They don't need to just exist in one place and that place only. They need, if you're going to be intentional about placing an element, think about how that concept can be reinforced throughout the composition. Think about color palette and sticking with a color scheme. Be mindful of type and choosing font styles that are appropriate for the theme. So anyway, I hope you all enjoy working on this assignment, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Have a great fall break, and I look forward to seeing you guys when we get back to campus that following Monday. So take care. See you guys later. Bye.